26, 1967, Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin were interviewed on radio by Jack Webster in Vancouver following the showing of the Patterson-Gimlin film at the University of British Columbia that same evening.
Researcher John Green had a copy of the interview in his cassette collection.
John graciously permitted Todd Prescott to make a copy of the recording.
Until now, and after a long 53 years, the interview had not been made public.
The significance of the Patterson-Gimlin interview is quite profound because it's a then current snapshot of the men's recollection of the afternoon of October 20th, 1967.
The audio is a bit inconsistent at the beginning, but gets better soon into the interview.
It is hoped that you enjoy this snapshot of Sasquatch Bigfoot research history.
Please do subscribe to the channel and hit that notification button.
"53 years later, here's the Patterson-Gimlin interview.
I've been interviewing eyewitnesses of Sasquatch sightings, Sasquatch themselves, since 1954. And I might as well tell you that the first time I've been what you might call really impressed. I saw the film taken by Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin near Eureka, California on Friday afternoon, the 20th of October. And I'll tell you, it's like a eyewitness of a flying saucer, a personal one. Well, Roger was kind of excited, but it shows quite clearly a huge, human-like, fur-covered creature striding along a creek bed in a most distinctive manner. I think you can say honestly from the film that the creature is feet. When it turns sideways, you can see the mammary glands, and the hips appear to be massive thickness right through. And my immediate reaction was, it's a phony, and then you begin to think about it, and you think, if that's wearing a costume, it's the most unusual costume, because there's no sagging, no bulging, no nothing. And then the footprints are there, the actual footprints of this creature in the Bigfoot country are deep, so the creature must be a heavy creature. Unless it's a very tall man carrying a great deal of lead weight around his shoulders. However, here's the man that took the picture, Roger Patterson from Yakima. Now, Roger, took you to that place, and precisely where was it, and why did you go there?
Well, first of all, the reason that we were in this place is I've been filming a documentary on this thing for the past 8 months or so, and I've been going to areas interviewing people that have seen these creatures other than myself now, and we had went to this particular area because a month before this they had found 3 different sets of tracks up in that area.
Now, going back to you, first of all, you showed some routine film of your pack horses, didn't you?
Right.
Now, what were you doing filming at that particular time on the pack horse bit?
Well, we had hadn't taken any, and I thought right of that particular area there before, and there was an area right in there. There was some of these.
You were just taking odd shots then, wasn't
just taking some shots of the scenery and of myself and Bob in that area.
Now we'll just jump to what you first saw that made you excited.
All right, we rounded a bend in the road.
You were walking?
No, we were riding.
You on the horses?
Riding on horses.
Where was your camera?
The camera was in my saddlebags on the left-hand side.
Who was we?
Bob Gimlin, myself.
Bob's right here, right?
Uh-huh.
So you're riding on the horses, your camera's in the saddlebag, you come around the bend, and then what happens?
All of a sudden, I caught something out of the glimpse out of the corner of my eye, and my horse immediately reared on me, and I tried to pull him down, and at this instant after I seen the object to the side, I wasn't able to see it again for a little bit. It fell with me. I probably pulled him half over, and as he got up, I was able to get up and control him until I went around the other side and got the camera out of the saddlebag, and then I turned my horse loose and was able to start shooting. And
just a minute, you got off your horse and turned it loose?
Right. Well, my horse, no, I was already off my horse. I was on the ground underneath him.
Okay, you got your camera, turned your horse loose.
Right.
Then you looked up, and what did you see?
I looked up, and I seen this creature about 120 away, and she was at that point had turned around and was just going up the bank, this small bank over there, and I started running and trying to get a shot of her, and I yelled at Bob to cover me.
Where was Bob? Where were you then, Bob? Bob Gimlin from Yakima.
I was directly behind Roger, mounted on the horse that I was riding on, and also when this creature, we sighted this creature, my horse frightened from it too, but he was an older, seasoned horse, and I controlled him quite well because I stayed in the saddle, and I did cover Roger at the time he told me to cover him, and I
What do you mean cover him?
I took my rifle from the scabbard, from the saddle, and in the event that this creature would attack, I felt that I could protect him somewhat.
Did you have your eye on the creature all the time?
Most of the time, when I didn't have him on the ground where I had trying to control the horse on, it was a little bit unlevel. And
What was the creature then doing when you first saw it?
when I first saw it, it was standing, looking straight at me,
Face on.
face on.
Describe it to me, Bob.
It was a large, hairy creature with arms that hang down beside its, fore down on its sides, below its knees, and it was quite.
Would you agree with that?
Well, I think Bob's a little excited here. We were below the knees; they were above the knees.
But they were well down on the thighs, weren't they?
way down, right?
Because I could see that on the film tonight.
Yeah.
They were well down on the thighs.
And she was heavy, although I had no way of estimating her weight at that time, and only guessed since then. But she turned then, she stood there for an instant, and she turned and started up over this bar.
Now, when you looked at her, describe her physically to me. Was there any shred of clothing of any kind?
No clothing at all on this creature, covered with hair only, except around the face and nose. The nose was bare, and around the cheeks were bare.
What kind of nose did it have?
It had a broad, flat nose. With,
like a gorilla's nose with the open nostrils?
No, not like that. The nostrils, you could not see down.
Would you agree with kind of human-type nose?
That's right.
What about the lips?
The lips I never really noticed that much at that particular time when she was face on to me, because she just stood there for an instant and turned and walked away with her, started walking away.
Any sound at all?
No.
Now, what about the physical characteristics, her figure?
She was kind of slumped and very heavily through her entire body was heavy, and
Were the breasts visible?
they were visible.
Were they covered with hair?
Were covered with hair.
Mm-hmm. Now, the proportions of the body. Was it like a giant human?
Yes, it seemed to be, to me, more like a giant man, except it had breasts. This was one thing that her characteristics, and the anthropologist and zoologist this evening brought this out, that it seemed to be more like a huge man. In other words, she didn't have a narrow waist and a big set of hips like that we would think of as a woman.
And when it strode away from the camera, it walked very much like a huge, big, strong man, didn't it?
Well, it did. However, I would make the estimate that, or the judgment, I might say, that a female of this kind wouldn't look very female-ish under the environment that she would maybe have to...
Bob, how did you feel when you saw it? Do you think somebody was pulling a gag on you?
No, not it. Just it was surprising, and we talked about these things many times, and actually talked what we would do if we happened to see one.
Now, before we finish the chase, you had your rifle out the scabbard. What kind of rifle was it?
30-06 rifle.
And you can use a rifle, obviously.
Yes, I can. I'm grown up
Would
with
it
one.
been worth $100,000 cash to you if you'd raised that rifle and shot this creature? You must have known that.
I don't believe I could do it.
Even if you just wounded it.
Well, like
mess.
Roger
Hey?
That would be
A mess.
a mess. To both Bob and I, we had agreed that we will not shoot one of these creatures unless she would attack us or that we would be protecting our lives. I think that we would have to fear for our own lives if we were to wound and make a terrible mess out of something like
Right.
this.
So finally, I'm back to Roger Patterson again. When you got your camera steadied, did you stand still and take the pictures I saw, or did you follow it on foot? Her, we should say follow her on foot.
I followed it on foot because this was the only way that I viewed this situation. Of course, at the time, and I could see her moving away from me, and I knew Bob was there, and I thought, if I'm ever going to get any pictures, I'll have to do it now. And I ran as best I could and trotted.
How close did you get the closest?
Well, I think we were closer when we first seen her than any other time, don't you, Bob?
No, I disagree with you there. I believe just immediately after we got across the creek, we were probably closer to her at that time than we were when we first sighted her, because she had her back to us at that time, and or at least I was closer because I ran a little farther up on the horse. I was moving pretty fast when I got him finally across the creek. So I believe at that time when I crossed the creek, I was the closest I ever was to her, and I believe it was about 90 feet at that time.
Now, Roger, how far did you notice colors of the palms of the hands there? Were you close enough for that?
I was, but I never noticed.
Now, how far did you follow her?
I didn't follow her any much further than when my camera run out of film, and I knew that it was out, and Bob got on his horse and went after her then, and from that point he seen her more than I did. I never seen her again.
How far were you able to follow her?
I watched her until she went up a road about 300 yards, and she went around in the road, and that was the last I seen of her.
Now, after all this dreadful excitement, what did the pair of you do? Here you, after all these hundreds of years of rumors and sightings and all the rest of it, all up and down the Pacific Northwest and in Michigan and Wisconsin and everywhere else, what did you do when you're standing there, you've recovered from the shock with a camera full of film? I mean, just tell me precisely what you did at that time. What did you say to each other?
Well, when Bob come back, I yelled for him, Bob, come back, because at this point my horse was, I didn't know where, and the pack horse was gone. My scabbard, my rifle was in the scabbard on the horse, and the tracks before down in there that we had heard about were in a set of 3, and there was a bigger one there, and I felt that possibly there was a male close in the area.
You were getting nervous.
I was getting nervous.
And then you were on foot there without your rifle.
I was on foot without anything, and I yelled for Bob to come back, and we would think the thing over. And
was that the time you broke off the chase, you might say?
Right, that was when I last seen her go around the curve. And at that time I went back and proceeded to gather up Roger's horses, or his horse that he was riding, in the pack horse. And after
then what?
After chasing him up and down the road for a little while and finally catching him, well, we talked it over, and I said I'd check around and see if maybe that I could find some tracks where she had come into this area and possibly sight the other one. So I took the camera while he gathered up his stuff and
you
just
scouted around for a while, did you?
Yes.
Then when did you make the... Now, were you able to identify specifically the tracks she had made while you were following her?
Yes, because immediately after we went across and immediately after I called Bob back, we looked at the tracks, and they were the tracks were there.
These are the tracks we saw in the movie tonight.
That's right.
The tracks for which you had the plaster cast tonight.
Mm-hmm.
How come you had plaster cast with you?
We didn't
plaster with you.
We didn't have plaster Paris with it. We had to go back to the truck and get plaster and come up and cast them.
How long would that take you to leave the scene, go back to the truck, and come up again?
We were at that point about 2 miles from that area?
Yeah, about 2 miles, I'd said. By the road, it was just about an even 2 miles. Across the hill, or that way, it was a little shorter, but we went through.
Now, okay, so you then gave up. You took the plaster tracks. How deep were these tracks, by the way, in inches? Inch and a quarter? Here they are, here.
Some of them were down as far as 3.5 the softer soil. These particular ones we took here weren't quite so deep because they were flatter tracks.
All right, now, have any of the zoologists or the people you consulted, have they given you any idea of the weight of this creature?
No.
And the height of the weight?
They did on the height, measuring by of her feet in the picture, and they estimated her height to be approximately 6'9".
What was the length of the stride?
Pardon me, but this was estimated on a 14-inch track, and these were 14.5 inches, which would add quite a considerable bit.
What was the stride cadence? I believe that's the proper technical description.
She averaged a 41-inch stride, somewhere thereabouts. She was taking sheet to a 46-inch stride.
So that was 3 feet 5 to 12, 36, 12, 14, 48. 3 feet 5 to 3 feet 10.
Yes.
Ah, goodness gracious me.
And of course,
There must be lots of them around there. I mean, what would they be doing down at the creek?
Well, they're in this creek. We didn't fish it, but we seen them jumping, and I could only surmise what she was either drinking or possibly trying to catch fish in the creek.
Any sign of what's the word, faces around? Any other tracks of the animal?
There was no droppings at all.
That's the word I was looking for. Well, now what? You're going to sell this film to the highest bidder?
Well, we just haven't made any definite plans, but I would imagine that we will probably sell it.
How can you afford to take all this time off to go down? Oh, no, rather, first of all, how long have you been looking for Sasquatch, live Sasquatch?
Well, off and on for about 7.5 years. But in the last 4 years, I've made much more of an effort than any other time.
You're financially independent?
Well, somewhat, yes.
In other words, you can go out this kind of caper without suffering too much financially?
Well, it's been tough.
Why has nobody ever found any bones of these Sasquatch down in that Bigfoot country where there have been reports of so many tracks?
Well, not only down in that country, but there's been tracks all over the Northwest in Canada, as you well know, in Canada. But they seem, I think anyway, this maybe doesn't agree with all of the fellas that's been involved in this, but they seem to dwell primarily in the rainforest, or they can get to the rainforest fairly easy. And bones in this type of climate, in a rainforest climate, don't last very long.
Do you realize, boys, Bob Gimlin and Roger Patterson, there are people who are going to say you're total nuts? You know that, don't you? You're held up to ridicule by some people.
Well, I've taken quite a bit of this in the past, and it doesn't surprise me. I know they're there, and I know that we're going to get one in the next possibly 5 to 10 years, or maybe sooner. Mm-hmm. And when we do, I think there's going to have to be many people, and also scientists, maybe a little crow.
Now, you said they're vegetarians, eh?
I don't think that they're solely vegetarians.
You think they go for fish, like bear would go for fish?
I think that they will eat what they have to keep alive. And I think that in some areas, if they can get enough vegetation, they probably...
Thanks for watching and listening. Hopefully you enjoyed that. Remember, there's plenty more good stuff coming soon. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button.